Hi, my name is Jonathan Sanders. I am a professional association of diving instructors, PADI, scuba diving instructor. And I would like to talk with you about the very real importance of not scuba diving without first going through the proper training. This issue cannot be overstated. Scuba diving is a dangerous sport. There's high risk. However, with the proper training, the risk is really greatly reduced. I'd like to just discuss a couple of the very basic concepts of scuba diving right now to drive home the point that you should not do it without training. About 2 years ago, there was a boy I'm not sure where he was, but he was in a pool. He went down to 8 feet and he rocketed to the surface and he died within 3 minutes. And you may think to yourself, holy cow, that's terrifying. And it is. And that is why it is so critical to have a basic understanding of scuba diving. So the reason that boy died is this. When you descend in water, air shrinks. The molecules of air come closer together. And the way that produces itself is that if I fill up a balloon with air, tie it off, take it underwater, as you descend, as you go down, that balloon will actually shrink in size physically. And the reason for that is the pressure of the water, the weight of the water surrounding it, because it's an ambient pressure, which means surrounding pressure. Then, as you ascend, that balloon expands back, which is what happens when you are not scuba diving and you just hold your breath, you swim down, and you come back up. The air in your lungs contracts as you go down, and as you come back up, it expands back to the normal size. Now, the problem arises with scuba diving in the fact that when you take in, when you take down a cylinder of compressed air, that cylinder prevents the air inside from contracting or expanding. So it pretty much stays the same in there. Even though when you breathe it in, it shrinks. The bottom line is that you have a high pressure gradient in that in that tank, therefore you can breathe off of it. So when you go down underwater, you get to the bottom, you get to 8 feet, you take in a big breath of air, your lungs fill up to full size at the bottom. As you come up, that air expands. And so it's the equivalent of this, and I'm going to get to the golden rule in scuba diving here in a moment. But if you go down to the bottom and you fill up a balloon to this size with air, and then you ascend and it expands and expands, expands, boom! Finally, it'll explode. That's what happens when you hold your breath, and that's why the boy died, because he went down, filled up his lungs, held his breath, shot to the surface. His lungs tore like the balloon, and his chest cavity filled up with air, and the pressure gradient in his chest changed so that his heart could no longer beat and his lungs could no longer expand and contract. So his heart stopped beating and he couldn't breathe. And it's terrible. So all of that can simply be avoided if you adhere to the golden rule in scuba diving. And that is simply, you never, ever, ever, ever under any circumstance hold your breath. That point is driven home in an open water scuba certification class. During the course, you actually practice not holding your breath while you're breathing underwater. So you get underwater with a certified instructor, someone who's been through years of training, literally, and you learn to take your regulator out of your mouth and you breathe out. So even if you're not able to breathe, you're still exhaling. And the reason for that is that at any moment you could rise. And at the moment that you rise and you have your breath held, you're risking destroying your lungs and passing away. And so that is one very critical reason to take a course on scuba diving. A second one that is equally as bad and not quite as lethal all the time, but extremely damaging is the bends. And what the bends are is, as that air compresses and compresses and compresses, it eventually kind of liquefies. It gets so close together that it takes on similar properties as liquid, at least the nitrogen does. Nitrogen's inert, so that your body doesn't process that. So we know that the atmosphere is about 70% nitrogen. So as you breathe in, and you breathe out, and you breathe in, you're breathing normally, and you're down there. Well, if you stay for too long at too deep, you load up a whole bunch of nitrogen in your blood and in your flesh. Then as you come up, what happens when you adhere to proper scuba diving standards is that your body is able to regasify that nitrogen and process it out of your lungs naturally. So in other words, it may turn into kind of a liquid, but if you come up slowly, it regasifies, comes to your lungs, and you breathe it out. However, if you come up too quickly, your body cannot metabolize it out quick enough. It turns into a bubble, and it physically will tear the flesh. You know, a lot of times it gets in your bones, and it'll actually destroy your bones. And if you're squeamish, then sorry. So, I bring you to point number 2. Don't come up too quickly. Don't stay down too long. How will you know what's too quickly to come up and what's too long to stay down without the proper training? You can't. So, I would just like to admonish you, if you're going to be doing any scuba diving ever for any reason, I don't care if it's in a pool, get training. There are tons of professional, highly qualified, world-class organizations out there that you can go through to get certified. There's PADI, the Professional Association of Diving Instructors. There's NAUI. There's the YMCA, and a whole host of other organizations. And so there's also scuba diving shops all over the place. Always go through a reputable shop or a reputable instructor with a reputable organization, and pay attention to what you're doing, and you can go scuba diving with much less risk, and you'll find that the learning process is highly enjoyable. So I would just encourage you to look into this before really considering scuba diving. Thank you.